There is never, ever just one answer to a problem. I worked this out when I was campaigning for greater rail safety. I'd already set up the Paddington Survivors Group, and the public inquiry into what happened during our train crash was already underway. And we decided we were going to campaign to make the UK railway system safer. I took some time out to sit back and think to myself, why did other campaigns not work? And what I mean by that is that before our crash, there'd been two other huge ones. One was Clapham and one was Southall, and people had lost their lives in those. And there had been public inquiries before. Governments like public inquiries, don't they? Anyway, each inquiry came out with a huge book of recommendations. But as far as I could see, once I researched into it, almost none of those recommendations had been implemented. So the question was, why was that? And it was because it was too easy to get mothballed and put on the shelf, and the government just basically ignored it. I didn't want that happening with our group. So I had this huge problem of how was I going to get them to pay attention. So I took a whole day out to sit down and think to myself, how can we do this? What I came up with was, okay, effectively, we're going to have to join them. It's that old adage, isn't it? If you can't beat them, join them. However, I wasn't prepared for us to lose our objective. We were never to lose sight of what we were after, which was a safer railway system. But having decided that, I went back to my fellow survivors and said to them, okay, guys, we are going to have to be really professional. We are going to have to be really researched so we understand what we're talking about. There's no good talking to rail engineers about signal boxes and signals and the rolling stock and the safety systems unless we understand what their terminology is. So we put ourselves through a crash course of finding that out. The other thing we realised was that unless we held the government to account, they would easily ignore it, or, bearing in mind, one party does not stay in government for years and years and years. Well, correction, some do, but after a while there is a change of government. I knew it was important not just to go for the government, but also to go for the other political parties. So we had to get cross-party agreement to what we were attempting to do. I think, above all else, we had to be true to ourselves. And although there was a lot of emotion, you've got to remember we've been through a terrible experience. We had to push that to one side. We had to be professional. We had to talk to them at their level and using their language. And that became really important. But because we took that approach, I believe that's why we were successful. 99% of the recommendations that came out of our inquiry were implemented, which is why the UK railway system is one of the safest in Europe. And I'm really proud of that fact, and I'm proud of my fellow survivors. So do remember, again, it needn't be something as big as a campaign, but if you're facing a problem, take some time out, sit back and think to yourself, okay, this is in my way. How do I come around it? How can I change my mindset in order to overcome that obstacle?